As someone who's been a diehard fan of Community ever since its NBC days, I've been delighted to see the fanbase grow ever since it got added to Netflix. It's a show that's never been able to spread very well by word of mouth, but typically only needs a single episode to prove itself to new viewers. If you are a Community fan, which I assume you are, you can probably grow the community from a nudge, or even just finding a way to get someone to watch a single episode. That's how I found out about it. When I was in 10th grade, my neighbor showed me Remedial Chaos Theory the week after it aired. You know what I did the next week? I showed up at 8 p.m. on Thursday to watch the Halloween episode of Community. There are countless video essays breaking down the best episode of Community, and most of them are either about the paintball episode or Remedial Chaos Theory. And hey, no arguments here. Respect the classics. The best episode of The Office is Dinner Party, the best episode of Parks and Rec is Little Sebastian, the best episodes of Seinfeld are The Junior Mint and The Soup Nazi. No one needs to be countercultural. But on my most recent of many watches of Season 1 of Community, an episode popped to me that had never popped before. I thought about making a video on it, but I didn't know how to articulate what I was thinking, but it's been over a month, and I've still been thinking about this episode of Community and what it represents. I was working on a video about Debate 109 and the difference that it makes to the show as a whole. I was watching the entire first season of Community to confirm the point that I had made in the video. And in that watch, I found that Science of Illusion, the show's 20th episode, was carrying a lot of weight of the first season and its arc. This is the episode where Shirley and Annie team up as buddy cops while Uppbeat aids them in their dynamic. Britta kills a frog while trying to prank Chang and drops a dead body on the lawn, and Jeff and Troy team up to prank Pierce after he got his level 6 laser lotus status. Now you're probably thinking, give me the Annie and Shirley plotline and keep the other ones. And I was too. In fact, let me clarify that I'm not trying to pitch that this is the best episode of Community, but rather this episode is a microcosm of the show Community itself, that this episode is the episode that sums up the entire show as well as any episode, and that this episode shows the values of the series as a whole. This episode is about every character manifesting their own insecurity relative to the other people in the group. Each character is up to something that they believe will heighten their status and perception within the group dynamic. For Annie, it's trying to prove that she's not a little kid. For Shirley, it's trying to prove that she's not irrelevant or old. For Britta, it's trying to prove that she can be light and fun. For Pierce, it's trying to prove that he's cool and accomplished as a Buddhist. For Troy, it's trying to prove that he can be funny and keep up with Jeff Jones. Jeff and Uppbeat are at the center of all of this. In fact, the show's values are reflected through the divergent actions of Jeff and Uppbeat. Jeff is the match that lights the fire. The cold open is the group hanging out together and Jeff making fun of Britta, and the other members of the group joining in with him.
Oh, well, it sounds a lot less fun when you say it.
Everything does. She's a buzzkill.
This is nothing new and nothing old for the show. They've made fun of Britta before, and they'll continue to do so for her ability to step on other people's fun. In this cold open, Jeff incites the first prank of April Fool's Day. He sends Uppbeat to get a wizard robe for Pierce to wear, thinking that it's from his Buddhist church, but Britta finds this prank is mean and out of taste, ruining the fun for everyone else. After this, the plot breaks into 3 separate ends: A plot, B plot, C plot. Annie and Shirley compete over who the renegade cop is going to be, and Uppbeat helps them get there. Britta works on her prank to disprove what everyone said about her in the cold open, and Jeff and Troy work together at pranking Pierce throughout the day. All of these efforts go poorly, except for Jeff, who's the only one who knows what he's doing. All this builds together for a pretty regular sitcom climax. The A plot is Annie and Shirley, who decide, of course, that they need to work together to solve the case. Britta attempts to frame Jeff, which works all too well, which results in a climax that defines the entire episode.
Stop it! Stop it, I did it! I framed Jeff, but why? Because I'm a buzzkill, that's why. The only reason I slammed Jeff's head against the table was because I wanted to feel like an adult. I wanted to feel younger like Annie. It was not that I'm really old, people don't know how to handle it.
Somebody must have sent me drove by accident. I only pretended I was level 6 to impress you guys. Held back.
It's not a meteor, it's a cookie line. Me and Jeff made it because it made it look more like a Cookie Crisp, is it? I just pretended like I knew because I wanted Jeff to think I was smart.
The characters all come together in an embrace. They've all hurt themselves by measuring themselves in relation to what they thought that other people would think of them. They use their own insecurities as a means to care for each other. Throughout the episode, their insecurities had divided them, but at the end of the episode, their insecurities unite them. Except for these two. Jeff and Uppbeat sit together, the only ones who didn't have a confession for the group as to how they let their insecurities get out of hand. Jeff led a pranking assault on Pierce that ended up making both Pierce and Troy feel bad about themselves, and he spearheaded the effort to make Britta grapple with the fact that she's a buzzkill. Uppbeat, on the other hand, was deep in the muck of Shirley and Annie's conflict. The YouTube channel The Take did an excellent essay on Uppbeat's parasocial relationship. All this means is that Uppbeat uses tropes from film and TV to relate to the world. While many psychologists, including Ian Duncan, believe that this is a harmful habit, the show believes that this is a healthy habit. Uppbeat's character shows the quality impact that a parasocial relationship can have on an individual's life. Without film and television, Uppbeat would have no way for relating to the world. But yet, Through calculated and predictable tropes from film and television, Abed is able to have a meaningful, impactful, and popular life. But beyond that, Community shows us that parasocial relationships aren't just healthy for the individual trying to relate to the world, but that they're also helpful for any of us. Film and TV tropes already inadvertently make up our narrative framework. Whether we believe it or not, we are making sense of our lives through the lens of film and television. In this episode, we see where Abed's parasocial relationship ends up helping Annie and Shirley. He guides them through their conflict, but not without leading them into conflict first. He lets Annie and Shirley express their frustrations, but not by counseling them, but rather by guiding them experientially in a safe and guided way. This isn't the first time that Annie and Shirley have butted heads about their dynamic within the group.
Can we stop with the pumpkins and the sweeties? Being younger does not make me inferior. If anything, your age indicates that you've made bad life decisions.
Shirley has a response to that.
Annie and Shirley are both upset about their treatment based on their social status. Annie believes that she isn't taken seriously because she's young. Shirley believes that she isn't taken seriously because she's older. The cause is different, the resulting frustration is the same. They feel they aren't as legitimate of a voice as Jeff, Abed, or Britta. In this episode, Abed helps them live out their anxieties while staying within arm's reach the whole time, knowing how to bring it home.
You're off the case and off the force. Your badges, your windbreakers now. Now!
In the end, Annie and Shirley become the unlikely duo that brings Jeff Winger down, or brings Britta Perry down, or Jeff and Britta down. The group comes together. And as the group hugs it out, bonding over their confessions of insecurity, we see the two ends of how one can exist in a community. Jeff and Abed. One dividing, and the other bringing together.
Let's never let Jeff divide us again.
The point of the show is that communities, particularly diverse ones, have the capacity to make us better, to challenge us, to give us the opportunity to help others become better versions of themselves. The show is pretty straightforward that Jeff has a vital role as the leader of the study group. Without the Winger speeches that bring their conflicts into coherence, the group would never be able to stay together. The group does rely on Jeff, but it is also held back by Jeff.
Roxanne! Oh! You don't have to put on the red.
You guys see what happens when I leave you alone, huh?
In the end, Jeff never really develops past this. Troy, Abed, and Annie all have arcs that are sort of on a hero's journey arc, where they're very different and have overcome a lot of their fears and insecurities. Jeff and Pierce have arcs that line up a lot more with tragic arcs. Their flaws at the beginning of the show are still their flaws at the end of the show.
Well, that's your problem, Jeff. You've been acting your whole life, okay? It's time to pass that act up and find the actor that's playing you.
Oh, they are gonna love you in California.
Jeff never learns to define himself beyond his status at Greendale. If Jeff were able to confront himself from the standpoint of pursuing health, rather than simply responding to various bad behaviors that surface in a variety of ways, Jeff would develop past Greendale and past this group. Communities are supposed to be temporary in nature, especially learning communities. You never want to lose track of your college buddies, but you also can't keep living with them forever. This episode of Community is about what leadership in the community is actually made up of. It's about rooting for the people who are in it, helping them overcome their hurdles, not leveraging their insecurities to seem cooler within the dynamic. Why do you think everyone is so insecure about their shortcomings? Because Jeff is. Abed presents himself as the character who's beyond that. He's not without his insecurities, but he doesn't let that get in the way of rooting for his friends. This episode can appear somewhat skippable in the grand scheme of the whole series, and once again, if you're not a fan of the show, but a critic, this can come off as the show spoofing the buddy cop genre. But it's all here. Everything that made up the show is found in this one episode. All the insecurities, all the value of what being in a community brings, and all that it can do to hurt you. I'm Chet Popelka. My channel is called Chet's Favorite Movies. If you like this video, feel free to check out my other videos on Community, on The Office, on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Groundhog Day, and much more.